A U.S. delegation is on a three-day visit to Taiwan to reassure the island of its support. U.S. lawmakers said, and I quote, "Taiwan must remain as it stands today, a candle burning freely, fiercely and improbably against the darkness." The bipartisan delegation includes some of the strongest critics of China in the U.S. Congress. Excuse me. They are meeting current Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen and incoming President Lai Ching-Te. The visit comes at a time of increased military activity from China around Taiwan. Joining me for more is DW correspondent James Cheta from our East Asia Bureau in Taiwan. James, good morning. It's the first time a U.S. delegation has traveled to Taiwan after the general elections there. Is that reassuring for Taiwan?
Well, I think some people here will definitely be viewing it in that way. This visit's, of course, coming in this crucial intervening period between, as you mentioned, that election which took place in January and the inauguration of the new president scheduled for May later this year. Both the current government, though, and the president-elect Lai Ching-Te come from this party in Taiwan which Beijing views as separatist and refuses to communicate with. And so there is concern that in the run-up to that inauguration in May that Beijing might look to ramp up military, economic and maybe diplomatic pressure on Taiwan to exact some of its aims. So what the US lawmakers, their visit at this point in time, are trying to really achieve is to emphasize that the support for Taiwan remains steadfast and that, especially the composition of this delegation, most of these lawmakers come from or have connections with a US House Select Committee which works on strategic competition with the Chinese Communist Party, known for its pretty hawkish stance on China. And so that composition won't be lost on officials, certainly here in Taiwan, but of course in Beijing too.
And what was discussed in the meetings with President Tsai Ing-wen and President-elect Lai Ching-Te?
Well, visits from overseas delegations to Taiwan usually follow a pretty well-oiled script. The discussions with leaders usually look at how partnerships can be expanded, whether that's on the economic and diplomatic fronts. But I think what was particularly significant to this particular delegation, this delegation's visit to Taiwan, is really just the timing of this, given the international context, really on the eve of the second anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And while Russia looks to be making pretty significant gains in Ukraine, a Russian victory in Ukraine has always been something that particularly worries officials in Taiwan because they fear it might embolden China to take similar military action against Taiwan. So that was something that was really part of these kind of urgent discussions, a reminder really of trying to make a connection between these two situations. One member of the delegation quoted a witness from a recent congressional hearing in the United States where he said, "You can't be tough on China and weak on Ukraine." And Mike Gallagher, who's leading this delegation, quoting from discussions with the president-elect Lai Ching-Te, said that Lai had made clear that if for some reason the Ukrainians do not prevail, that will only encourage hostilities against Taiwan. So officials really trying to make that connection between Ukraine and Taiwan and trying to emphasize, particularly from the US perspective, the support for these two parties are really part of the same fundamental question.
We'll leave it there for the time being. DW correspondent James Cheta in Taipei. Thanks so much.